Hello everybody! I am Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, and it's that time again! The time where we batten down the hatches and prepare for a storm of hot takes for Final Fantasy XIV that you provide that I have to react to in these videos. And before we get started, leave your hot take for Final Fantasy XIV, no matter how wacky or wild. I want it the spiciest that you can possibly give me, yeah? Spicier, hotter, the better. Like a fire 4, I want it piping hot. And who knows, maybe I'll react to it in a future video. Let's get right on into it though. For the first hot take of the day, we have at Raven3557 bringing to the table my take: the MSQ is one-time use content. It being mid isn't that important. I only interact with it once. Yeah, okay, we're starting strong, aren't we? Okay, so I wouldn't say it's not that important. At the end of the day, Final Fantasy XIV is just that. It's a Final Fantasy game, and the story, narrative, the world, the characters are extremely important to immersing you into a world, making you care, and making you want to see what comes next. And I don't think Dawntrail did the best of jobs with that. However, there is an element to this that I do agree with. At the end of the day, yeah, Final Fantasy XIV is a Final Fantasy game, but it's also an MMORPG. Most players out there aren't going to be just replaying the story over and over and over and over again. They're going to be doing the endgame content. That is going to make the largest slice of the proverbial pie in terms of your experience and your playtime with Final Fantasy XIV in most likelihood. And I think that's one of Dawntrail's saving graces, is that the content we've been doing, or at least that is on offer, has been pretty dang fun. I still have quite a bit I need to do. Though I will say it's kind of disappointing. It's standard course as always for Final Fantasy XIV, but it is kind of disappointing that the stuff I was particularly hyped for when it comes to Dawntrail was all the endgame stuff that's not going to be in the game till the patches, like the new field operations and all that. It's standard course for Final Fantasy XIV, but that doesn't necessarily make it good. And we kind of have this giant lull until at least 7.1, so I think, especially if you're still in the circles for Final Fantasy XIV, you're either doing endgame raids or you're just talking about the main story. But yeah, Final Fantasy XIV is absolutely known as the MMORPG known for its story because of how sacred so many people hold it in that extremely high regard. But at the end of the day, it is an MMORPG. Most of the time you spend playing this game, especially at endgame, is going to be focused solely on the actual gameplay elements of it. Having a great story is all well and good and can matter a lot, but an MMO can still succeed with a bad story if the gameplay and the content is there, fun, replayable, and exciting. But I don't think the opposite also holds true. I don't think an MMO that has an amazing story but barely any good or satisfying gameplay to speak of can really thrive or succeed. It may for a time, but it'll eventually wither and falter. Now granted, I don't think 14's gameplay is bad, and it's not perfect by any means or any stretch of the imagination, and I have absolutely no inclination to play any DPS right now. I'm firmly comfortable just simply tanking until maybe we get a lot of changes down the line, but I guess to some degree I do agree, with this take at least. Next up we have at Kitty7180 proclaiming, I truly don't believe Wook changed by any great degree through Dawntrail at all. She's the exact same character from when she was introduced, and by the time the Dawntrail credits rolled, nothing really changed. Okay, yeah, I know quite a few people actually will agree with this take. I don't. I think there's a difference between a character having no development and that development just not being translated all that well. In the Reddit succession, you had various moments where Lamat had to come to terms with the idea that she can't do all of it by herself. She has to rely on others and not be afraid of her own weaknesses. Like, yeah, it's kinda handled quickly, but that development is there. And while she always will yap about understanding and peace, it is challenged when Zeralja invades Tuliolol and kills Galulja. Like, you have that moment with not Sphene, but with Lamat, where she has to come to terms with the idea that her brother is beyond saving. She has to go there as the vow of resolve now to kill her own brother. There's no understanding there. The only understanding is that she has to do her job. She has to kill Zeralja. Again, it's handled rather quickly, but that development is there. She does change, It moves away from someone who believes that every issue can simply be resolved by understanding one another. It's challenged once again with Ffxiv, where she is essentially forced to confront someone who is like the extreme version of herself. Ffxiv wants to protect her own people's happiness, something that Lamat yaps about the entire time as well. But the difference between her and Lamat is that Ffxiv is willing to sacrifice other people's happiness for her own people's, or even just the memory of her own people. And the whole resonator thing is something that Lamat kind of comes to understand, that it's something she'll never fully accept or understand, but that it's part of, Alexandrian culture. But even despite that, she had to learn, look, Ffxiv is an existential threat. I can't just understand where she's coming from. I have to act accordingly. I have to shut this off. I have to turn off the endless to get to her. So it's not like we preserve the endless because, oh, it's part of Alexandrian culture, it's part of Ffxiv's culture and all that. No, we take it offline. And then we are forced to confront Ffxiv and bring her to heel. The Lamat from the beginning of the game wouldn't have done this. Over the course of Dawntrail, she is forced to accept that she has her own weaknesses, and that not every problem can be simply resolved with a firm handshake, or by understanding where people are coming from. Sometimes, you gotta do what you gotta do. And I don't think Dawntrail explained this in the best ways. I don't think it was properly paced, but I disagree with the idea that this story wasn't there at all in Dawntrail. There's a difference between bad development and no development, or even good development handled badly. We have at Dorian Brooks 9408, with their hot take being, the Dawntrail cast should have been us, Erinville, Graha, and Lamat. For trust, duty, support reasons, Lamat is capable of being the definitive tank, or DPS if they keep the shtick of shoving characters in a role even if their class job isn't that role. Graha never got his adventure, thank God someone else brought this up, is the very knowledgeable for the magical, metaphysical elements or aspects of the story, especially in the latter half, and is an all-rounder, and he can sub for whatever role is needed based on your Warrior Light's job or class, and Erinville and Kryl get to get their character exploration. Graha and the Warrior of Light, in my opinion, would make good mentors for Lamat as well. The Warrior of Light as a training partner and Graha as a mentor in leadership for obvious reasons. I do kind of agree. I think the twins, on the whole, were pretty misused and were just kind of there because they're the twins. They had this whole reason with trying to, help Gollum all get back on their feet. It's kind of flimsy in my opinion. And to me, it felt more like there was this implicit lack of trust in Dawntrail to be able to stand on its own 2 feet, and you had to have, or at least the characters there, and you had to prop them up with Alize and Alphino, characters that most of the community absolutely loves and cherishes. Not to say the same doesn't hold for Graha Tia, but yeah, I think the angle they went with Graha and the whole getting his adventure was that the Alliance raids of Endwalker was supposed to be that. I disagree. For me, I want an entire expansion where it's just us and Graha going on this adventure to the new world. I think that could have had so much room for potential. You elected not to kill Graha in 5.3. You had those great scenes with Graha in Endwalker. Give us that, fun, laid-back, summer vacation-esque vibe with just the adventure we've been promised for so long with Graha Tia. You do that alongside Erinville and Lamat, and you tweak the storytelling in such a way, I think that could have been a ton of fun, while also not feeling beholden and reliant on an older cast of characters that you only use intermittently, and honestly kind of half-baked. And if you rewrite Lamat's stories to where she can take knowledge and inspiration from both Graha and the Warrior of Light, I think that would have been a better dynamic and a better way to introduce the character of Lamat and also develop her. Because Graha has that leadership experience as the Crystal Exarch. That would translate brilliantly to the story of Lamat. And then as the vow resolves, she could also learn from not only Graha's heroics, but also ours. If you take your time to properly develop that and you have these scenes of the both of them mentoring Lamat and her trying to absorb that information and that experience, I think that would have made for a far more well-received character. Speaking of Graha Tia, we have at Nikki Des 9236, Justice for Graha Tia, let my homie eat a taco by 7.3. Thank God. right? And from everything we've been reading about with these interviews, it definitely does sound as if they're going to do the 7.3 being the Dawntrail finale part. Thank God, I think that pacing works way better for patches. So yeah, I definitely think the ending of 7.3 is Graha finally being able to eat his taco. I think that's almost certainly going to be the angle they go for here, as just like a nice, hey, see, he finally got his taco moment. Low-key, Graha not being able to eat his taco in the end cutscene of Dawntrail's, legit one of the bits that just kind of irk me the most out of all of Dawntrail, because it's like, why do we have to do my boy like that, you know? We didn't ride that gondola for nothing, yeah? I was promised tacos, but Cool Jar Jar stepped on them at the beginning of the game, and then Graha got, cock-blocked there. Dare I say, guac-blocked? I'm a comedy god. Now we have one final hot take for today's video. At Zerathos888, Zenos, Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood, introduces a badass samurai man who threatens us with his great hunt. He attacks the rebel HQ and injures a scion. Then he proceeds to sit on his throne, only middle managing his pawns while they do all the work raising the violence of the war. He should have been actively involved in escalating the war, not sitting back like every poorly written video game villain. Then he offs himself at the big fight like a coward after losing, which was pathetic, big massive failure as a villain in Stormblood. Then you have Zenos in the Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker, where he operates as glorified muscle for Fandaniel, a cringe villain, but actively raises the stakes of the catastrophe to push you to break further limits, so he can duel you at your peak. Amazing, fantastic, absolutely brilliant. Could do without Fandaniel, that villain was straight up worthless, but as far as I'm concerned, Zenos redeemed himself in Endwalker. Stormblood Zenos was still absolutely terrible. And now, here's the funny thing, right? I didn't like Zenos when he was first introduced, and he didn't become one of my favorite characters until Endwalker. Well, until he got, reintroduced, from the death. But yeah, I think coming off the back of Heavensward especially, and that whole fight with Nidhogg, they did do the thing that kind of pisses me off with a lot of stories with Zenos, where it's like, and now we're gonna introduce this other guy you've never heard of before, but surprise, he's even stronger than you, after you do this great heroic feat of epic proportions. And then this guy walks onto the scene like he just came out of, backstage, slaps you down, no-diffs you, and walks away. What really won me over with Zenos was not his development throughout 4.0, it was that finale speech where we stood in the Great Menagerie, and the man yapped to us about our intentions and all that. And I'm not gonna lie, part of the reason he won me over is because I had this conspiracy theory back then that the way that dialogue was presented, that at some point down the line in the future, they would eventually give us the choice to become a villain, or go this path of villainy for a bit, or at least be extremely selfish in our motivations, and kind of walk a path similar to Zenos. I knew it was unlikely, but I'm like, you know, this could be a really interesting angle to explore, and I became receptive to the character then. And then later on, I just loved everything about this character. Now, I will push back, though, when it comes to Fandaniel. I think in the not Endwalker, in the Shadowbringers post-patches, Fandaniel's, solidly mid. Man yapped about money, he was the over-the-top goofball antagonist, but I genuinely did like him in Endwalker. I think he helped make Medion a great villain for me. It's not that Fandaniel/Hermes was the best character by himself, but he falls into the line of what I like to call a support character, where their role in the story is not necessarily to be able to stand on their own 2 feet, but it's to make the characters surrounding them better. And I think Hermes/Fandaniel does that, to where he makes Zenos a better villain, by putting Zenos in a better position to be a better villain, plot-wise, and so that Zenos is alone after the whole Moon situation, but also Hermes makes Medion a better character, with the development that we get in Elpis. And I can appreciate a good supporting character. But yeah, I often hear that a lot of people wished Zenos didn't come back at all, and that his story was ruined because he came back and all that happened afterwards. I kind of agree with Zerathos here, so maybe this is even my hot take as well. I think Zenos became so good in terms of a character, not his moral alignment, but just his enjoyability factor, because he came back. Because everything changed with him coming back. He was this sole, singular-minded purpose of a character, where he only wanted to fight us. He became hyper-fixated on us. He went from not caring about us at all, because we got one banged originally by him. And then he comes back and is like, I will burn this world simply so that we have a stage to respect the 1v1. Man soloed the Gallian Empire simply because they may get in the way. I appreciate that level of commitment. Like some people buy flowers or a ring, Zenos just takes down an entire imperialistic empire. Like legit, what a chat. And not only that, dude turns into a dragon, flies halfway across the universe just to have our back so that we can ride his back, not that way, so that we can fight a giant bird girl who is in her emo phase at the edge of the universe. And then we could have our 1v1 with him, after accepting him. Legit narrative perfection for me. You could not write a story to better appeal to me than him. And with that, I shall bid you all an adieu. Thank you all for tuning in. As a reminder, please leave a comment down below with your hottest, spiciest take for Final Fantasy XIV. I don't care if it's unpopular or anything. Give it to me. I can take it. I can hold the line. But until then, make sure to leave a like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified for when I upload and stream in the future. I really appreciate it. Stay safe. Have a great day. Until we meet again. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.